Good morning. This is Faith in Our Hometown, brought to you as a community service and sponsored by Mercy Hospital, Joplin. And now, here's your host, Father Jay Friedel.
Good morning, and thanks for joining us for another Sunday morning of Faith in Our Hometown. I'm still always amazed that all of you tune in on a Sunday morning, and I love seeing you all in the grocery store, and when I see you at the hospitals or wherever, and you say, "Oh, I watch your show on Sunday morning," and I always chuckle and laugh because I think, what are you people doing on a Sunday morning if you're watching this at 6:30 in the morning? But we're glad for you early birds, and we're glad for those of you who watch us at 9. We're just happy that you're joining us for a little bit of a conversation about life here in our hometown. So this morning we're going to be talking about a concept called true charity, and that true charity concept is, it's just like, how do we care in the right way? And of course we're going to have different opinions about that. But this morning joining me is going to be James Whitford from Whitford Gardens, and James is always challenging in terms of us trying to do this in the right way. So we're going to hear what he has to say, and we're going to be right back after this Mercy Minute. Grab your coffee and settle in.
I have arthritis in my knees, and it was just excruciating. I wish I would have done something sooner. I found myself not able to go up and down stairs, which is bad because we realized we were going to have to sell our house. We decided just to take the worst one first, and we did. I was back to work in 6 weeks. 6 months later, I had surgery on the second one, and I'm back to work in 5 weeks. And I was a little scared, a little apprehensive, even though I knew everything that was going to happen. But I was just impressed. Life is short, and I waited. I think I waited too long.
Well, again, my guest this morning, James Whitford from Whitford Gardens. He's the executive director over there. James has been on the show many times, so it's always good to have you back and have a conversation with you.
Good to be here.
We've talked about some of these concepts before, but I always think it's good for us to keep, sharpening the stone, or sharpening the blade with that stone, and just having it all come together. Because we don't always agree about all the approaches, but I do think that you're onto something, and you're very good at reminding the community that when we go to do charity, you always call into question what's true charity and what's not healthy. Right. And I think it's always a good thing for all of us to try to work toward, because I know that there are things that are wrong with the system, and I know we're not done tweaking the system.
Well, right.
Okay? And if we get tired of tweaking the system, we're not doing right by ourselves, we're not doing right by our politicians, we're not doing right by the people we try to serve.
That's right.
So let's talk about this concept of true charity.
Well, it's just as you're speaking, I'm thinking about how charity gets started. When my wife and I started our mission 18 years ago, it really was out of a compassion for people. So the problem is that compassion is coupled with great intentions, but great intentions don't always yield something that's fruitful and really truly helpful. Right. Well, we experienced that ourselves. In the first few years, we just thought, gosh, as people are coming in and they're in need, and we listen to it and we can see it, and so we meet it and we would give them stuff, and then they would walk out the door. And we found out after a while that the compassion that's at work, yielding that kind of charity, wasn't really effective. And so when we talk about true charity, we're really talking about effective charity in some regard. Compassion will always yield some work, but the work that comes out of that may not be effective. So you can have ineffective charity and you can have effective charity. So what does that look like? And that really is the question. And it's been a journey. We've taken a lot of learning curves, but we certainly feel like there are just a few primary things that are important for us to keep in mind. One is that folks, if all we're doing is just meeting the superficial need, whatever that is, it may be that somebody's hungry, it may be that somebody needs clothing, maybe that they need shelter, But if we just continue to meet that need without engaging them in some way that calls for reciprocal activity, some form of exchange, then we're just going to trap folks into dependency. And these 5 steps to dependency, I bet I've said them on this show before, but they're worth saying. It comes from a book called Toxic Charity by Robert Lupton. And the idea is that our charity can be toxic sometimes.
It can, and I agree with that.
And if we give something to somebody once, they'll have an appreciation for it. If we give it to them again, they'll probably have an anticipation that we're going to do it a 3rd time. If we give it to them a 3rd time, they'll have an expectation that we'll do it a 4th. If we do it a 4th time, they'll probably feel entitled. So entitlement is step 4. And a 5th time, they may be dependent on you and me for it, and they slip into a dependent pattern of care. And so,
yeah, and I agree that I think that can be the mode for some people. You know,
sure.
I also think that sometimes, what also can happen is the fact that sometimes you do some of those things, and knowing that it's an imperfect situation, it's an imperfect world, and because of that, there's going to be a few people that need it each time for a different reason. And yeah, there's going to be some hangers on. There's going to be some people there that, just come because you got the doors open. And it's okay. I mean, I can live with that. Because I've probably quoted this to you before, and this is one of my friends who works in social concerns for our own diocese. And he says, in some ways, when you're in the charity business, nobody can take advantage of you, because you're doing what you're doing. Now, I agree with you in the fact that that we want to make the best and the most profound and lasting change for people who are in many ways capable of doing that.
Sure.
Especially because I think that if we never help people try to better their lives and to know the pride of working and the pride of having of doing that. I mean, and we got lots of things to support that, and certainly in my own faith tradition, in terms of that from the Catholic tradition, that just says everybody's entitled to work and everybody should work, and that's one of those things that's important. And so if we're not helping people to do that, we become a part of a bigger problem. Sure, I look at some of it and go, I'm not so sure that some of the people that, for example, that we feed, for example, are really ever going to be able to work. And so what do we do with them? Do we just do nothing? Do we let them start? So, I think that there's I think there's just a graded interest here. But what I love about what you do, is I think that you are working with so many people, and you've gotten people to take pride in changing their lives and pulling themselves up. And I think that that's wonderful.
I think what we've got to do is charity workers on the front lines or people who care that are helping. We just have to recognize that individual, whoever it is, whether it's a person holding a sign or whether it's a person coming into our church doors or into a mission like mine, we've got to look at that individual the way God sees that individual.
Exactly.
And that person has no less value than anyone else. And what happens, it's a kind of a trap that you get into. People are coming in and they have a need. And you're the agency or the place or the person that's supposed to help them. And so that's where all the focus goes. How broken are you? How poor are you? How in need are you? How disabled are you, right? And then of course they reciprocate. Well, this is my problem. This is what's going on, and this is what I need. And everybody focuses in on that, and we miss what can you do?
Yeah.
What potential do you have? And so we really want to capitalize on that part of the person that is really able and can do some things. And
I think that, and again, for those that are capable of doing that, I think you guys do a masterful job. I mean, I really do. I think last time you were on the show, you were talking about the Forge, and you were talking about helping people through that process of learning how to work and learning how to present themselves and learning how to be mentored, and because so many of them never even got any mentoring in some of those things.
Sure.
And you've created a system whereby they can be mentored. I think that is phenomenal work, and I'm so glad you're here in the community doing it.
So, Father Jay, consider this, you're right. Not everybody's going to make it into our Forge program.
Exactly.
And I agree with you. But even the person who used to push a grocery cart around our own downtown that obviously had severe mental health issues, was able to come in and partner with us in capacity at our mission for some things that she needed. And so, yeah, I mean, maybe never will have a full-time job with a paycheck, but there's an ability to enter into exchange for something that you need. And I believe that is one of the greatest things that we can do to preserve human dignity.
Yeah. And I mean, and I also think that there's a way to preserve human dignity just simply by saying, we don't care who you are. We don't care whether you got money or don't have money. We've got the ability to give you lunch today, so come by and take that as a free gift from us today. You know, and with no questions asked.
Right.
You know, it's just a different approach. I mean, it's kind of like, I wouldn't want you to stop doing what you're doing, and we're not going to stop doing some of what we're doing. You know what I'm saying?
Right.
But we're meeting different needs, and we're trying to do some of that. So, yeah. And it's just trying to take care of different aspects of the same thing, but again, trying to recognize the dignity of every human person that comes to us. And that just simply says, this is we may not be able to solve all your problems, but that's one of the reasons why we partner with so many different agencies, and to say, hey, we find out that there's a veteran, who just is, was struggling with some mental health things or whatever. Well, we can partner them with an agency that's designed to work with those veterans and to help them through that situation and to make some differences in their lives, and to teach them, some of what the other things that they were missing so that they could do that.
Right.
All right.
Yeah.
You're running, the Forge down there. You're and other programs as well. I mean, I know this is one of them.
Yeah.
But I'm just saying that's the one. That's probably my favorite of all the things you're doing, because that's. That just to me is just like good. That is to me, yay. But there's just so many different people in the area who care. And again, I don't ever want to, denigrate the caregiving, but I think that you're always on. I think one of the things you do for me, okay, just to say with some of your challenge, is to say to me once in a while, it's just like, okay, just don't get caught in, making somebody's life worse because of what you're trying to do.
Right.
And I can respect that, and I agree with that.
Yeah.
I know that probably in some cases we are. But I also know that in some of those other cases, we're helping, like, say, for example, the working poor, during the summer, to make sure their kids are being fed, and that's taken a little bit of the burden off of them. It's not like they're not working. It's not like they're trying to do the thing, but it's taken a little bit of the burden off. Okay, so we've been blessed with people who'll give us food to feed other people. Okay, so we're gonna go do it.
Yeah.
Because we can.
Right.
And again, I think all of us in the community have to find our niche.
Right.
It's saying, because I don't want to be duplicating.
Yeah.
And that's one of those things that that always drives me crazy, is just like, because I felt bad when we were running a food pantry. And then all of a sudden we started figuring out, oh, wait a minute, so many people are working at, so no.
Right.
So we're just like, okay, let's change our focus a little bit.
Yeah.
Nobody else, and at that point in time, needed us to be doing that in a neighborhood. Well, okay, since now we've got somebody else came back online, and now we got a little duplication. But nonetheless, that was something we could do. That was a niche we could fill.
Sure.
That was what I had volunteers who might not be, folks that can mentor some of the things to the Forge, but by golly, they're good cooks and they do their thing.
Yeah.
So at any rate, we're talking about true charity, and when we come back, I'm going to let you talk a little bit more about how we're going to fix some of that, or at least make some attempts to do true charity here in our area. My guest this morning, James Whitford. We're going to be right back after a quick break. This is Faith in Our Hometown.
You're watching Faith in Our Hometown on KSN TV, brought to you as a community service and sponsored by Mercy Hospital, Joplin.
Again, James Whitford from Watered Gardens here with us this morning, and we're talking again a little bit about true charity. So James, tell us about that concept a little bit again, and what you've been doing with some of the other agencies in the area.
Right. Well, True Charity is an initiative really we launched in 2012, and it was we had taken enough learning curves in our own work. We felt like we've learned some things. We ought to develop some education and try to help other charity leaders begin to rethink how how to do some of this work. And certainly the thing you and I have already talked about is the importance of implementing challenge of some sort, whether it's by goal setting or even relational accountability by developing a relationship, or maybe it's an earn it model where people are exchanging their time for something that they need. But there's some aspect of challenge, always remembering that challenge develops. Just like in the world of, I was a physical therapist, so in the world of physical therapy, if we don't implement challenge for our patient who's sick and in bed, then they'll simply remain sick and in bed. Challenge develops muscle strength, right? Similarly, in our work with people who are struggling, at some point we want to get out of cyclic relief and implement some aspect of challenge to make sure they don't remain sick and in a bed of poverty for the rest of their lives. If we're going to help people out of poverty, we've got to do that. That's one thing. The other thing that we educate a lot on is the importance of measuring what matters. So churches and charities across the nation are always counting the number of heads that came through the door, or the number of stomachs that they fed, or the number of meals that they served. And those are output numbers, and they're not bad to count. We should count them. Okay. But we've got to begin to look at how can we measure human impact, and the impact that we're having on people.
Sure.
And some people will say, "Oh, James, that's so aspiritual. I mean, what does that have to do with a gospel rescue mission? All the data and the things like that." And I always tell them, I think Christ makes a difference in our life today. And if He's making a difference in the life around us and the people around us, it's probably measurable in some way. And so we really talk about how do we develop outcomes in charity work and not just measure output. How do we look at how many people are we really helping develop more social capital? That's a good outcome. How many people are we helping with getting back to a job or a career? That's an important outcome. So we want to begin to measure those things in our work. How does we serve food and we have a food pantry, but we better connect the dots between how that is ending up helping people get a house, or get a job and that kind of thing. So that's another piece to true charity that we think is really important.
So you said you've been working with some other agencies to kind of broaden that thought. So how's that been working? I mean, in terms of.
Yeah, well, we feel like it's time to start highlighting charities, and missions, and organizations in our community that we think are hitting those marks. Who's not just doing handouts, right? And so there's challenge, right? Who's measuring what matters? Who's looking at outcomes and not just output? And the third thing that we look at is who's privately funded. And we feel strongly that true charity is privately funded because true charity stems out of compassion, which we talked about at the beginning of the show. Right. So it's compassion that makes you want to do something, whether it's give money to an organization or an individual, or whether it's to help them with soft skills training to go get a job, whatever it is, there's something that's calling you to do something. And whenever we get away from private funded approaches, we talk about public funding, which is someone's money coming through the government to help someone, and the person from whom it came may not even know the individual and certainly has no compassion for him or her. And so it short circuits what we call true charity. And we think that, gosh, we're looking for organizations that implement challenge along the way, measure what matters, measuring outcomes, and are privately funded. And we've begun to certify some organizations that kind of hit those marks. We're excited about that.
Yeah, it's interesting. And again, it's a change in philosophy. I would say that, for example, and again, this is probably where we differ a little bit philosophically.
Well, it wouldn't be the first time.
It wouldn't be the first time. But I'm just saying, for example, I know that there are certain things and certain ways that, for example, Catholic Charities gets money from the government to run certain programs. Now, not for everything. A lot of it is privately funded, but some of it is running a program, where the government says, we need help to do something like this. We need an agency in your area to help work with this. And so because of that, we're going to give you these federal dollars to do this. And, again, it is sometimes a pain in the neck even taking the federal money, because then you got to do certain things, certain ways and all that kind of good stuff. And I mean, we won't take certain contracts and do certain things because we don't want it to conflict with our values.
Right.
But we do for other things, Like, for example, I think one of the things that the Catholic Charities took a grant for to help would be, providing assistance to making sure that veterans don't get homeless for whatever reason. Okay, so I mean, they become the workers of that grant, and they will do that kind of thing. So in that regard, they wouldn't be certified that all the money was private.
Right.
But again, my contention is, and I think that I don't know what the measurement, I don't know what the mark is, because I do believe that one of the reasons why I pay taxes, and one of the reasons why I am, now I don't think, trust me, I've learned plenty through the years that I don't think they'd always do it as well as we do.
Right.
But part of the reason why I pay taxes and why I think it's part of a public trust is that's one of the ways that government really does try to take care of some of the folks that would otherwise fall through the cracks.
Yes, yeah.
Now, again, I think religion should be doing more of that, and the government should be, because I mean, again, I really think they mess it up a lot.
Yeah.
I mean, and I get that.
Yeah.
But how, where is that balance?
So
So I'm willing, like for example, I'd be willing to go in some of that, but there'd be other areas where I'd push us to wean ourselves from some of that as well.
Consider this example. It's an interesting one. There was some state funding that was for prison reentry, as folks would come out of prison to help them get a job. And then they were going to make those cuts as there were some changes happening politically in our state. And there was some uproar. Oh, please don't make cuts to the prison reentry program. But they did. And what was really interesting is there was a local church that picked up the ball where the state could no longer do it because of funding cuts. And so here you had the church stepping up to do what the state was doing. But few people would have ever thought while the state was doing it that the church was being crowded out. Because when things are crowded out, they're out of sight and out of mind. And so you don't really think about that, but then a vacuum came and the church stepped in. So somehow we ought to orient our policy and our charity around this idea, which we've talked about before, subsidiarity.
Right.
How is it that we can see policy-protected subsidiarity where neighbor helps neighbor first, church, mission, local community helping neighbor, before we see state and federal government helping neighbor? And until we protect that, we'll never really know how much is being crowded out.
And I agree with that. And I do think that we need to be more in ongoing conversations. I think that's one of the ways we have to tweak some of the system. I mean, I really do.
Good. We agree.
I agree with that. I agree with that, because I mean, I do think that there are some things we can do, but I also think there are other things that are falling through the cracks that I can't afford to do, and I can't figure out any other way to make sure that some of that's happened. Like, again, more protections for some of the mentally ill. Right now, I haven't figured out any other way how to tap that and to figure out what to do with it, because I can't afford to pay the experts to do some of that stuff. And so, but I don't think that we collectively, we as a state, we as a nation, or we as a church are doing enough to take care of some of those folks.
Right. It's interesting. So we just had a dinner with about 6 professional counselors because of mental health issues that we're experiencing, and we're beginning to partner with them so that they can help. We're driven to organize that kind of help before we begin to look at state-funded help, because we're committed to a privately funded approach. It's another example of what kinds of creative things like that might other organizations or communities do if they weren't thinking federal dollars first. So I think that there's a lot that we could do that we just we don't know right now until we were really pressed to do it.
Right, and I agree. I think that sometimes we're only going to figure some things out when we are absolutely forced to do them.
Yeah, I know.
And I agree with you wholeheartedly
and yet
on
to
that.
not hurt anybody in the process.
Exactly, not to let people fall through the cracks
gotcha.
accordingly.
Yeah.
And that's the tough part.
It is.
So there were a couple other things we wanted to talk about before we run out of time. We only got a couple minutes here.
Oh, okay.
And I know you wanted to talk a little bit about the Worth Shop.
Well, sure.
So let's talk a little bit.
I've got some stuff I brought with me.
Sure.
So the Worth Shop for for us is the way that we implement challenge into our care. So there's an exchange process. People will come in and earn whatever, food, clothes, shelter, it doesn't matter, but they might work in our Redeemed Bean coffee. And so I wanted to gift this to you. Do you like coffee?
I do.
Oh, good. Okay, you're going to like our Redeemed Bean coffee.
And so this is like, you're going to tell me this is like fair trade?
Well, yeah, it comes from a farm in Nicaragua.
Good.
And then we do the roasting and grinding and all of that right there in our Worth shop. And so there are people that are helping with that.
Yeah.
And then we do leather.
We had some of our kids a few years ago really wanted to get into doing fair, so they were challenged in the parish to do fair trade coffee and make sure that you know that was getting more directly to the people who needed it rather than to the big
Sure.
So this is great.
Oh yeah,
I love it.
Absolutely. Well, you're going to like the coffee too.
I probably will. We're Nicaraguan, but some of my Colombian people, my Colombian associate, they're all be like going, So yeah.
So we do copper and leather. That's like three things: copper, leather, and coffee.
Okay.
And so this is
you need to define something other
we
than
do leather
you need to do something other C.
And copper and right. Well, at any rate, so these are things that are being crafted in the Worth shop, and we do these leather journals as well, and so
those are kind of cool.
Yeah. So just different things that are being made by people. But we're created in the image of a creative God, and so it's a great opportunity for people to express that aspect of themselves.
Well, that's right.
For the basics that they need.
Real quick, before we get, we got to take a break here. But where would folks go to get some of this if they wanted to?
Go to projectworth.org.
Okay. Projectworth.org.
Projectworth.org.
Okay. Well, we're going to be right back to this Mercy Minute. Don't go away, and we're going to be right back for our wrap up.
A new baby changes the world and each of us. The Sisters of Mercy devoted themselves to offering exceptional maternity and delivery care, training generations of nurses to do the same. Mercy continues to answer the same call, to not only care for your baby, but to cherish them too. Mercy, in every era, your life is our life's work. Learn why we serve at mercy.net/legacy. Everyone on board dreamed of a new life in America. The Sisters of Mercy had a different dream, to serve all who had need. From the first hospital Sister Frances Ward built to the world's first virtual care center, we continue to answer the same call, to bring mercy home to you. Mercy, in every era, your life is our life's work. Learn why we serve at mercy.net/legacy.
Well, again, thanks for joining us for another Sunday morning of faith in our hometown. Our conversation this morning was kind of one of those, wild ones about what is the meaning and nature of true charity, and how can we really help the best? Because that's what any of us that have a charitable heart, want to do for other people when we see that they have a need. But sometimes can our caring make people dependent? Yeah, I think so. But by the very same token, is there space for us to just do things without worrying about anything, just out of the kindness of our hearts? Absolutely, I think that too. How do we strike that balance? How do we do what is going to do the most amount of good and the least amount of harm as we go forward? And I think that's a continual challenge to all of us who try to help take care of our neighbors. But one of the things that I don't want anybody to give up on is taking care of their neighbor and trying to find the right way to do it. This is Faith in Our Hometown. We hope that you come back and join us again next week. God bless. Enjoy your Sunday.
Thanks for watching. Faith in Our Hometown can be seen Sunday mornings at 6:30 and 9 a.m. on KSN. Brought to you as a community service and sponsored by Mercy Hospital, Joplin.